After securing a $30 million windfall, I chose silence, conducting a subtle test of my nearest kin. My older brother reacted with outright contempt. My parents resorted to religious platitudes, but it was my sister who performed an unforgettable act. 5 years prior, my entire existence took an abrupt turn. Yet the change wasn't the typical rags-to-riches fairy tale. While it's true I had won the large prize, the real story unfolded once the money revealed the true character of my family. A little background is necessary first, as context is everything. Alistair is the name, and I was a 39-year-old man residing in Portland, Oregon. For the vast majority of my years, I was what you'd call a supplementary sibling. I was neither the heralded favorite nor the rebellious outcast, but rather the easily missed middle child, the one who attracted no special notice. You know the archetype: decent grades, steered clear of trouble, but never quite accomplished enough to demand attention. I earned my living as a heavy-duty mechanic for a transit corporation, often clocking 12-hour shifts inside freezing workshops, fixing massive tractor-trailers. Donovan Reed, my foreman, was the classic old guard type who firmly believed that success in management was synonymous with yelling at his crew. The salary was barely enough to maintain a humble apartment in a triplex that had certainly seen better eras back in the early 90s. My immediate family dynamic was, to put it mildly, complex. Allow me to introduce the group of individuals who seasoned my adolescent and young adult years with such enjoyment. My elder brother, Preston Sterling, is 42 and has always been the favored son. Immediately following college graduation, our parents, Eleanor and Gregory Sterling, facilitated his purchase of a site development business. Not just a co-signer, mind you, but a direct cash transfer for machinery, initial investments, and the like. This man upgrades his pickup trucks every few seasons, constantly posts tiresome hustle culture platitudes on social media, and genuinely sees himself as a self-made titan. The level of self-deception is truly astounding. He acts as if he forged his enterprise from nothing, when the foundation was literally poured with our parents' funds. Press is the kind of person who casually slips the price of every item he owns into conversation. I just picked up a $90,000 Ram, but you know what happens when business is flourishing? No, Press, I actually don't know how that operates because some of us had to navigate life without a private family fund.
Then there is my younger brother, Caleb Sterling, who is 34 and continues to inhabit our parents' lower level. He is perpetually in between ventures, pursuing his next big idea, which translates to engaging in online military games until 4 a.m. Our mother still brings him sandwiches cut diagonally into perfect triangles, as if he were still 9 years old. Caleb possesses a talent for making unemployment sound like entrepreneurship. Every handful of months, he unveils a revolutionary data application concept or a digital currency strategy that he promises will make him a millionaire. Spoiler alert, not a single one comes to fruition. My sister, Veronica Sterling, is 36 and a single parent who works part-time at a grooming salon. She is raising her 11-year-old daughter, Skylar, mostly by herself after her former partner decided fatherhood wasn't his path and relocated to Miami. Veronica struggles every month just to cover the rent, yet she is entirely without complaint. She's the type who shares images of Skylar's school art on a certain social media platform with captions like, "So proud of my amazing little creator," while wearing the same 4 sweaters on rotation as every spare dollar goes toward her child. And then there was me, the ghost in the machine. When I lost my flat at the age of 31 because the landlord sold the structure and declined to renew any rental contracts, guess who was not offered a temporary place to sleep? That's right, the family home had a fully finished lower level that sat unused save for Caleb's elaborate gaming setup. Instead, I spent 8 weeks sleeping inside my truck across various public lots, cleaning up at the 24-hour fitness center, and desperately trying to maintain my self-respect as my life unraveled. The critical turning point came 18 months later, when my truck's transmission finally gave out. This wasn't merely an inconvenience, It felt like an existential collapse. Without the vehicle, I couldn't commute to work, and no job meant no funds to repair the truck. I was facing a $4,000 repair cost and possessed only about $300 in my bank account. So, I set aside my pride and called Press, outlining my situation and requesting a loan, not a gift, with a written interest and repayment schedule. I even offered to work extra weekend shifts for his enterprise to pay it back. Press listened to my entire tale of woe and then began to laugh. Not a polite chuckle, but a full, rolling peal of laughter, as if I had just delivered the most hilarious joke he'd ever heard. "Maybe," he offered, still choking on laughter, "it's time you just admit you're not cut out for much. Some people are designed for success, and others are just built for other things." That line embedded itself in my mind like a piece of shattered glass. For the next few years, every time something went wrong or I faced difficulty, I could hear Press's voice. "You're not cut out for it." I ended up securing a 500% interest short-term loan to fix the truck. I spent the subsequent 10 months paying it off, subsisting on instant noodles and cheap sandwiches just to manage expenses. Fast forward to 5 years ago. It was a Saturday evening in March, and I had just finished one of those shifts that make you question every life decision you've ever made. 12 hours of crawling under freezing metal, getting hydraulic fluid in my beard, and enduring Donovan Reed blaming me for problems that predated my arrival. On the route home, I pulled into a fueling station, partly for gas, but also because my truck's heater was failing, and I needed a few minutes in a warm structure. The store was nearly deserted, with only myself, the cashier, and a Sempe truck driver buying energy drinks for a long-haul trip. I had precisely $60 in my billfold, and it needed to last until the next payday. Gas cost $40, leaving me with $20 to scrape together whatever groceries I could for the coming weekend. But there, behind the counter, was a display of instant scratch-off tickets. Now, I am not typically a gambler. I had only purchased maybe 6 lottery tickets in my entire life, and they were all worthless. But something about that particular night was different. Perhaps the exhaustion, perhaps Press's voice still echoing, or perhaps just the dark humor of being 36 with $20 to my name that prompted me to pull out a $25 bill.
"Give me one of those $25 tickets," I instructed the clerk, pointing to a game called Mega Fortune Syndicate. He handed me the ticket and a coin for scratching. Normally, I would have waited until I got back to my apartment, but the truck was freezing and the store was warm, so I scratched it right there on the counter surface. First box, $750,000. Okay, that's just a common prize amount, nothing unusual there. Second box, $750,000. Odd coincidence, but still nothing major. Third box, $750,000. My heart hammered erratically against my ribcage. I checked the rules printed on the back of the ticket, twice, then 3 times. The prize amount is the sum of 3 matching figures. I had just won $750,000. But wait, it got much better. When I looked more closely at the ticket, I realized I had misread the numbers entirely. This was not a $750,000 prize, this was a $30 million jackpot, which after taxes and deductions amounted to $19.5 million. I remained frozen in that fueling station for a full 7 minutes, simply staring at the ticket, waiting for the numbers to shift or for someone to declare it a mistake. The cashier asked if I was all right. The trucker inquired if I needed to take a seat. I muttered something about needing fresh air and staggered outside to my pickup. Sitting in the parking space, engine idling, I stared at the ticket until my eyes watered. I took multiple photos of it from every possible angle with my phone. I searched for the State Lottery Commission's hotline and dialed their 24-hour verification line, keying in the serial number with shaking fingers. "Congratulations," the synthetic voice announced. "This appears to be the winning ticket. Please contact us during regular business hours to initiate the claims process." I drove home in total silence, not even bothering to switch on the radio. Back in my apartment, I sealed the ticket in a plastic storage bag, then placed that inside a second plastic bag, and finally locked it away in a small fireproof lockbox I had bought years ago for important documentation. Then I sat on my sofa, staring at a blank wall until the morning light appeared.
The lottery office opened at 9 a.m. on Monday. I arrived at 8:15, the first person in line, wearing my clean-it slacks and a button-down shirt I'd purchased for a job interview 3 years prior. The procedure was astonishingly straightforward, but it consumed a full week. Lawyers, investment strategists, tax specialists. Suddenly, I had a complete team of experts whose sole mission was to ensure I did not squander $19.5 million, like one of those warning stories you see on cable TV. Dr. Evelyn Hayes, my investment strategist, was a no-nonsense professional who had managed winnings for lottery victors for 18 years. "The money won't fundamentally change who you are," she stated bluntly, "but it will absolutely expose who everyone else is." We established a blind trust, diversified the holdings, and created several revenue streams. Conservative estimates placed my annual revenue at roughly $800,000 without ever touching the core principal. Even if I were to live lavishly, the funds would endure indefinitely.
But here was the twist. I had no desire to live lavishly. Not yet, anyway. I kept reporting for work all week, living in my dreadful triplex and driving my beaten-up Ford F-150. The only change was the sudden, unexpected smiles that would surface. For instance, when Donovan Reed would scream at me about productivity targets, or when I saw Press Sterling's latest social media post about his so-called empire. I had a clear objective formulating in my mind, a strategy to answer a single question that had plagued me for years. If I genuinely hit rock bottom, if my stability truly depended on it, would my family step up for me? I was about to find out. 4 weeks after claiming the prize, I initiated my first experiment. I contacted my parents first, reasoning I should start with the people who were supposed to offer unconditional support. "Dad," I said when he answered, "I need to discuss something serious with you." I told them my employer had been cutting hours for months and had finally laid me off. I claimed my truck's transmission was failing again, and the repair would cost more than the vehicle was worth. I explained that my landlord was increasing the rent, an amount I couldn't afford on unemployment benefits. My father, Gregory Sterling, listened to the whole speech before launching into a sermon about how adversity builds character and how proper men find a way to make ends meet. My mother, Eleanor Sterling, offered helpful suggestions like, "Have you considered praying about it?" and "Everything happens for a reason." When I directly asked if they could help me regain my footing, perhaps by allowing me to stay in Caleb's vacant room for a few weeks while I searched for new employment, the dialogue became instantly uncomfortable. "Son," my father declared, "your mother and I are on a fixed income. We simply cannot be expected to support adult children who should be self-sufficient." This from the same man who had written Prez a $90,000 check for his business equipment just 5 years earlier. "We will keep you in our prayers," Mom concluded, "but you have to learn to solve your own problems." I thanked them for their time and end of the call. 1 down, 3 to go. Prez was next. I called him the following evening around dinner time, knowing he would be home. "Bro," I said, using my most authentic tone of desperation, "I am truly in a bad spot here." I gave him the same narrative: job loss, destroyed truck, impending eviction notice. I asked if I could work for his company temporarily. Prez was quiet for a long moment, during which I stood completely still. My heart actually lifted. Perhaps I'd misjudged him. Maybe the bond of blood was stronger than I thought. "You know what? I might have something for you," he finally said. "I need someone to clean the office in the workshop after hours," he continued. "It's $10 an hour, maybe 22 hours a week, just so you're not sitting around feeling sorry for yourself." $10 an hour. The state minimum wage was $8.50, so he was technically generous with the additional $1.50. "Prez," I countered, "I was earning $26 an hour at the shop. I have 16 years of mechanical expertise. Don't you have any actual repair work?" "Look," he began, and I could hear the condescending inflection creeping into his voice. "Beggars can't be choosers. Take the custodial job or don't, but stop expecting favors just because we're family. Asking for work was, in his eyes, equivalent to asking for charity. I told him I'd consider it and hung up. Caleb's response was exactly what I'd expected. "Dude, that really stinks. I'd help if I could, but you know how it is." Yes, Caleb, I know precisely how it is. You are 34 years old, and your largest expense is your online gaming subscription. But Veronica was different. I called her last, partially because I didn't want to involve her in this test, and partially because I was sure she would try to help, even if she financially couldn't. "Oh my goodness," she exclaimed after I finished detailing my fabricated plight. "Why didn't you call me first?" Before I could respond, she was already formulating a plan. "Can I come by tonight? Do you need food? Do you have enough warm clothing?" "I don't have much," she admitted, "but I have $80 in my emergency fund, and you can have it, and my couch is available for as long as you need it." $80. This was from a woman who had to choose between petrol and groceries on a weekly basis. "Veronica, I can't take your emergency money." "Yes, you can," she insisted. "That's what family is for. We look out for each other."
She arrived that same evening with the money, a grocery bag full of basics, and a container of leftover chili and cornbread. She made up my sofa with her own spare blankets and cushions, gave me a spare key to her apartment, and told me not to worry about anything except finding a new job. That $80 was worth more to me than the entire $19.5 million sitting in the bank. While my family believed I was trying to find a new job, I was actually constructing something I had envisioned for decades. Utilizing a holding company, I purchased a mid-sized warehouse on the city's outskirts. Nothing extravagant, just 10,000 square feet of polished concrete floors and high ceilings. I converted it into a high-end customized truck and off-road vehicle fabrication shop. Not just service work, but full custom builds, advanced lift kits, performance engine swaps, bespoke paint finishes, and more. It was everything I had always wanted to do, but never had the financial means for. My first two employees were Hector Sanchez and Marcus Jones, two former colleagues from the transit company. These were the men who had given me rides when my truck was being repaired, covered my lunch when I was broke, and treated me like a human being instead of an inconvenience. Hector Sanchez openly wept when I offered them positions at double their previous wages, complete with premium health coverage. Marcus Jones asked me 3 times if I was serious before even looking at the contract. "How did you manage to finance all this?" Hector inquired, gazing around the enormous shop floor. "I got fortunate," which was technically the truth. Establishing the business required 9 months of meticulous planning. Permits, insurance policies, tools, and inventory. I had to learn more about running an operation in 9 months than Press Sterling had learned in his entire privileged existence. The most gratifying part was remaining completely invisible. Everyone in the city heard about the new high-end auto shop, but no one connected it to me. I was simply the guy who vanished after the layoff, presumably moving to another region for employment. Meanwhile, whenever I interacted with family, I continued the performance of the struggling, unemployed brother. I would appear at Veronica Sterling's apartment every few days, always looking slightly defeated, but profusely grateful for any support she could provide. She never once made me feel like a burden. During one of these visits, she mentioned that Press's business was starting to hit a wall. Customer grievances were piling up, projects were exceeding their budget limits, and he'd been forced to let go of 2 personnel the previous month. "He stressed all the time," she explained. "The other day, he yelled at Skylar just for being noisy. I told him if he ever speaks to my daughter like that again, family or not, we're finished." This was a fascinating piece of information. About 20 months into my unemployment phase, I did something far more satisfying than winning the jackpot. I purchased Veronica a house. Not a sprawling estate, nothing to trigger suspicion, just a comfortable 3-bedroom brick property in a quiet residential district with highly rated schools.
It had a fenced-in yard where Skylar could play, a two-car parking structure, and most importantly, it was located within a school system that would offer Skylar opportunities Veronica had never dared to imagine. I had my investment consultant, Dr. Evelyn Hayes, structure the purchase through a non-traceable corporation, and then my attorney, Ethan Bell, approached Veronica with a comprehensive narrative about being successfully admitted into a highly selective single-mother housing initiative that fully covered the acquisition cost. Veronica was initially skeptical. She's far from naive, and free houses simply do not materialize out of thin air. However, when Ethan presented her with all the official-looking documents and explained that the recommendation came from an anonymous donor who wished to remain completely private, she broke down in tears right there in his firm's office. I happened to drive past her and Skylar the afternoon they were moving boxes in. Veronica spotted me and rushed over to the car, literally bouncing with pure elation. "Can you even believe this?" she asked, gesturing toward the residence. "Skylar gets her own room with a window overlooking the garden, and there's a real soaking tub, not just a shower. I haven't had a proper bath in 6 years." Witnessing her happiness and knowing that I was the source of it was worth more than any retribution I had planned. By the 20-month mark, Preston's construction enterprise was in serious jeopardy. The celebratory social media updates about achievement and hustling had ceased entirely. His current model pickup had been replaced by a 4-year-old vehicle. Rumors circulated across town that his company was missing deadlines and exceeding budget caps on every contract. That's when he called, using a tone I hadn't heard from him in decades. "Hey, little brother." He deployed a forced, overly pleasant voice to manipulate me into giving him what he needed. "I heard you might still be looking for an opportunity." I had been unemployed for approximately a year and 7 months, surviving on what my family believed were limited unemployment funds and casual work. "I'm listening," I said calmly. "My business is, well, let's call it in a retooling phase. Lots of incoming bids, but I need someone I can fully trust to help me scale things up. I was thinking maybe we could talk about a partnership?" Partnership? That was a grand word. "What kind of arrangement?" I inquired. "Well, I'd obviously remain the primary shareholder since it's my company and my brand reputation at stake, but I could potentially offer you a 7% stake in exchange for a substantial capital injection." "How substantial?" $600,000 should stabilize things. It's an absolute steal considering the company's actual valuation. $600,000 from someone you think is jobless and desperate? I don't know, man. Bank loan, private investor, whatever. You're a smart guy when you try. Figure it out. The sheer arrogance was breathtaking. And what would I receive for this investment besides a 7% share? Mostly, you'd learn how to operate a genuine business from someone who is actually successful. Think of it as paying for a first-rate education. I told him I'd consider it and call him back. Instead, I spent the next full week meticulously auditing Preston's company, financial statements, customer satisfaction reports, outstanding debts, and pending litigation. I needed to know everything. The findings were significantly worse than I had assumed. Preston owed money to multiple suppliers, had 4 different clients threatening legal action, and was exactly 8 weeks away from total insolvency. His $600,000 investment opportunity was a frantic last-ditch attempt to stay solvent. But here's the thing about desperate people. They make reckless decisions. I called Preston back and informed him that I had located an investor willing to commit the capital. We agreed to meet at a high-end downtown bistro to iron out the finer points. Preston showed up to dinner in a rental luxury sedan, which likely cost more per month than most people's mortgage payments. He ordered the most expensive cut of beef on the menu and spent the first 25 minutes detailing his prospective vacation plans and some new machinery he was thinking of acquiring. I let him ramble, ordered a simple salad, and waited for him to get down to the topic at hand.
"So," he finally began, slicing into his $75 ribeye, "tell me about this investor of yours." "He's someone I've been communicating with," I replied. "Very keen on the construction sector, has readily available cash, and is looking for a controlling interest."
What's his background? Various ventures. He prefers to maintain a low profile. Preston nodded, as if this made perfect sense. Clever. I'm the same way. So, what's the consensus here? The full 600 in? He'd prefer to purchase the company outright, I countered coolly. He sees more inherent value in complete ownership than in a junior partnership. Preston's fork froze halfway to his mouth. Buy it outright? This company is valued in the millions. How much exactly? At least $3 million, maybe $4 million. I retrieved my phone, opened my confidential banking application, and pushed it across the table. Preston's expression cycled from cockiness to apprehension to outright dread as he stared at the screen, which clearly displayed a balance of $12.5 million. I had it formally appraised, I explained softly. Professional valuation, 3 independent firms. They all returned the exact same figure, $120,000. Preston Sterling's face changed colors multiple times. That's absolutely impossible. I've put years of my life into this business. Years of work that led to mounting client complaints, lawsuits, and impending bankruptcy. Preston, you are 8 weeks from losing everything. He remained silent for a long moment, staring at the screen. How did you... Does it truly matter? Here is my final offer. $120,000 cash for 100% ownership. You can remain on staff as a project manager, drawing a competitive salary. Project manager? It's my company. It was your company. Now it's merely debt and a toxic reputation. Take the offer, Preston, because it's the only one you're going to get. Preston signed the necessary transfer paperwork 5 days later. He had no other choice. It was either sell to me or file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy and lose everything with nothing to show for it. The ownership transition was swift and thorough. I kept the most competent staff and dismissed the rest. I cleared all the outstanding vendor obligations and settled the lawsuits. Most critically, I restructured the entire operation to prioritize client satisfaction rather than solely enriching the owner. Preston's first day as my employee was a deeply educational experience for us both. He arrived at his customary late time, 10:30 a.m., because owners don't track time, and headed directly to his old corner office. I stopped him in the hallway. "Good morning, Preston. Your new workspace is over here." I escorted him to a standard cubicle in the main central area, right in the middle of the activity. "Where is my office?" I converted it into a dedicated conference room, a much better use of the square footage. His executive sedan was replaced with a standard company-issued work truck that every other manager drove. His company expense account was revoked. His reserved parking space became the general guest parking. But what really shocked him was his compensation, which plummeted from $150,000 to $70,000, the same as the other project managers, which was quite generous given his recent track record. "This is temporary, right?" he asked after I finished outlining his new remuneration package, "until you realize how essential I am to the operations?" "Preston," I responded, "your value to this operation will determine every single aspect of your continued employment here. Perform well, and you'll be compensated well. Underperform, and you'll be replaced." For the very first time in our adult lives, Preston was required to genuinely work for his paycheck. While Preston adjusted to life as a regular staff member, I made a few critical changes. Veronica had always possessed an exceptional aptitude for organization and numbers, but her talent was being wasted cutting hair for meager tips and handling part-time bookkeeping for small businesses. I offered her the role of Director of Operations at a salary that was double what she was earning at the salon. She almost didn't believe me initially. "I don't have expertise running construction projects," she protested. You have experience managing a household on zero budget, raising a child entirely alone, and keeping multiple part-time jobs perfectly synchronized. Trust me, you are overqualified." Veronica proved to be exactly what the organization needed. She installed project tracking software, streamlined client communication, and managed to prevent Preston from sabotaging the work he was assigned. Watching Preston take direction from our younger sister was perhaps the most deeply satisfying element of my entire payback strategy. For 37 years, he had treated Veronica as if she were a non-entity, just another insignificant family member. Now, she was his direct supervisor, and she was outperforming him in every metric. Veronica never abused her power, but she certainly did not coddle him either. When Preston tried to take shortcuts on a build, Veronica shut it down. When he showed up late, she documented it. When he complained about his new situation, she politely reminded him that having a job was infinitely better than being unemployed. About 9 months into the new arrangement, Caleb began sniffing around for opportunities. He'd heard through the family rumor mill that I was succeeding and had even established a business. He showed up at the shop one morning with a curriculum vitae printed on flimsy copy paper and an air of unwarranted confidence. "Thought you might need an extra pair of hands," he remarked, surveying the tools and company vehicles. "I've got a few concepts for optimizing efficiency." Caleb's resume was a work of creative writing. He listed entrepreneurial initiatives as his primary experience and described his basement gaming setup as a remote digital marketing consultancy. "Specifically, what do you believe you could contribute here?" I inquired. "Well, I've been studying the sector, and I think you're missing some fundamental opportunities in the digital realm. Social media campaigns, online client acquisition, that kind of thing." This from a man who has never held a job for more than 4 months. "Caleb, this is a vehicle customization and construction business. Our clients care about quality craftsmanship, not hashtags." "That's exactly the kind of provincial thinking that keeps small businesses small," he said, seemingly unaware he was lecturing the owner, whose company was already more profitable than anything he'd ever attempted. I informed him that we were completely staffed and did not require any further assistance. He left dejected, but not completely defeated. Caleb's optimism is impervious to reality. By month 12, Preston was visibly struggling. The labor was harder than he recalled, the hours were longer than he was used to, and the utter lack of special privileges was grating on him. Everything reached a climax during a key client meeting. Preston had guaranteed a client that we would finish their project in half the standard time, clearly forgetting that he no longer possessed the authority to make such decisions. When the client called to confirm the timeline, Veronica had to explain that Preston had misrepresented our capabilities and that the realistic completion date was twice what he had promised. The client was furious. They came into the business for a confrontation, and their displeasure was aired loudly and clearly for all to hear. Preston tried to shift the fault to miscommunication and new management protocols, but it was obvious to everyone present that he had simply lied to secure the contract. After the angry client departed, I summoned Preston to my office. "That was completely unacceptable," I stated. "Look, sometimes you have to tell customers what they want to hear to land the deal. Then you figure out how to make it happen." "No, Preston. Sometimes you have to tell customers the truth so they can make informed decisions. What you did was unethical and unprofessional. Since when do you lecture me about business? 12 months ago, you were unemployed and desperate." There it was, the real Preston, the one who had been concealed behind a false civility since I'd bought his business. And now I own a profitable business while you're an employee who just cost us a major contract. Funny how quickly things change. Preston's face turned scarlet. "This is my company. I built this from nothing. You built this into nothing. I am rebuilding it into something sustainable. And if you cannot accept that, you are welcome to find employment elsewhere. "You can't fire me. I'm your brother." "I can fire anyone who fails to perform their job duties correctly. Being my brother simply means I gave you more chances than I would give anyone else." Preston stormed out of my office and did not return for 5 days. When Preston finally came back, he was noticeably altered. The veneer of cooperation had vanished, replaced by thinly veiled contempt and resentment. He began arriving late consistently. His quality of work plummeted. He started making snide remarks to his colleagues about family favors and lucky breaks. Meanwhile, my parents had become aware of the situation and were highly displeased. They called me on a Wednesday evening, both using the speakerphone for maximum moral impact. "What is this gossip we hear about you humiliating your brother?" Eleanor Sterling, my mother, demanded. "I'm not sure what you mean." "Preston claims you bought his business just to torment him," Gregory Sterling, my father, added. "He says you are forcing him to work like a common laborer." "Preston is working as a project manager, just like the other project managers. If he has issues with his treatment, he's free to address them through the proper HR channels." "This is absurd," Mom stated. "We are supposed to support one another, not tear each other down." The irony was so dense it could have been mined. "You are absolutely correct, Mom. Families should support one another. Where was that support when I was sleeping in my truck? Where was it when I needed help with basic transportation just to keep my job? That was different." No, it wasn't. The only real difference is that now I possess the ability to help or to withhold help, and I'm choosing to base that decision on how I was treated when I had nothing. Dad's voice turned severe. "You are being petty and vindictive." "I'm being consistent. Preston is still employed, still earning a respectable salary, and still has opportunities to prove himself. That is considerably more support than I ever received from this family." The conversation concluded disastrously, with my parents maintaining that I was actively destroying the family, while I calmly pointed out that it had already been ruined by years of favoritism and ingrained neglect. Preston lasted exactly 1 more month before hitting his final breaking point. He marched into my office on a Friday afternoon with a clear ultimatum. He declared, "I want my old position back. Full authority, executive compensation, company vehicle. This experiment has run its course." I leaned back in my chair and observed him. He looked depleted, defeated, but still hopelessly entitled. "What experiment?" "This whole charade where you pretend to be the boss. We both know I'm the one with the expertise and the network. Hand me back control and I might consider letting you remain on as a silent partner." The audacity was breathtaking. Even when losing, Preston could not conceive of a world where he wasn't the main character. "Preston," I murmured, "let me ensure I grasp this. You want me to return the company that I purchased from you, restore the salary and benefits that were driving the business into the ground, and accept a junior position in the company I've spent 12 months rebuilding? When you state it like that, it sounds unreasonable." "It doesn't just sound unreasonable, Preston. It is unreasonable. Here is my final proposal. You can continue to work here as a project manager, following the same standards as everyone else, or you can pursue employment elsewhere. Those are your only choices." Preston's face cycled through fury, disbelief, acute desperation, and finally, resignation. "You genuinely think you're better than me now, don't you?" "I think I'm more successful than you now. Whether that makes me better is a separate philosophical question. This isn't over," he spat, heading for the exit. "Actually, Preston, it is. And if you choose to leave, don't bother asking for a letter of reference."
Preston walked out that day and never returned. He didn't even clear out his desk. He just vanished like a poor-performing employee who knows he is about to be dismissed. I later learned from family acquaintances that he found work at a competing construction firm, but only as a basic site superintendent, earning about half of what I had been paying him. His girlfriend, who had been attracted to his perceived success, apparently decided that dating a mid-level manager was less appealing than dating a business owner. Within 4 months, Preston had moved into a smaller apartment in a less desirable section of the city. His social media presence, once a flurry of humble brags and luxury acquisitions, has gone completely dark. I felt nothing at all. There was no sense of triumph or lingering regret, just the quiet satisfaction of a long-standing problem that had finally resolved itself. 10 months later, my parents attempted one final intervention. They invited me to a Sunday dinner, the first invitation I'd received in over 3 years, and sat me down for what they clearly intended to be a serious family discussion. "Preston is really struggling," Mom insisted. "His physical health is suffering from the stress. He's lost weight and looks drained all the time." "This feud needs to end," Dad continued. "There is no feud," I stated. "Preston made decisions, and those decisions had logical consequences. He is free to make different choices whenever he wants." "You could rehire him," Mom pleaded. "Give him another chance." I gave him several chances. He chose not to capitalize on any of them. "But he's family," she insisted, as if that singular, magic word would fix everything. "So am I," I said. "So is Veronica. Funny how being family didn't matter when I needed basic help, but suddenly it's the most important thing in the world now that Preston needs help." They tried numerous other angles: guilt, obligation, and the concept of family unity, but nothing worked. Finally, Dad used what he believed was his ultimate card. "We are intensely disappointed in you," he pronounced. "This is not how we raised you." "You're right," I replied. "You raised me to accept whatever crumbs were thrown my way and to be grateful for them. You raised me to believe that my needs were irrelevant as long as Preston was catered to. But somewhere along the line, I learned that I deserved better. I excused myself from the dinner early and have not returned since." While Preston struggled to adjust to his new reality, Veronica flourished. She adapted to corporate management like a seasoned professional, implementing policies and systems that boosted our efficiency by 40% in the first year alone. Skylar was excelling at her new school, making friends, and joining extracurricular clubs that would have been unattainable in their previous situation. Veronica had enrolled in evening business courses at the local community college and was contemplating earning a full degree. "I never thought I was clever enough for college," she confessed one afternoon. "Growing up, I always felt like the slow one compared to you and Preston." "You were never the slow one," I told her. "You were simply the one nobody bothered to invest in." Veronica is now earning substantially more than Preston ever did. She owns her house free and clear. I continue to work alongside her, building something genuinely successful, not just financially, but ethically. If this narrative resonated with you, please consider supporting our channel for more genuine stories of family resilience. Thank you for watching.